Hey, and welcome to the show. This week we're going to look at Australia's carpet python family from the genus Morelia. And to kick off the show, we're here on the outskirts of Sydney where we're hoping to meet the diamond python. Now behind me is a typical habitat for this species, and one of the interesting things about them is that in midwinter, which is right now, they can sometimes be found under small rocks basking on north-facing slopes. They're usually the juveniles from last season. So now what I'm going to do now is walk around and see if I can find one to show you. Not under here. This rock here is just facing the right way. It's facing the morning sun, facing north. It's a thin rock, so it will absorb a lot of heat quickly, and it's on a nice flat surface. So this is an ideal sort of rock that you would find a baby diamond under. Not under here. You may have to lift 100 or even 200 rocks before you find one, because they're not thick on the ground, but if you persevere you will eventually find one. So I'm going to continue looking. Well, nothing so far, but this can be a fairly labour-intensive process. So we'll keep going, and I can see a nice rock outcrop just down there with some very flat, small rocks. Looks like perfect habitat. We'll just give that a go. Oh, difficult walking through the bush here sometimes. Nice little rock outcrop. Spot. There's nothing there. It's nice and warm. These rocks are really warming up. Oh, here's a perfect flake. This is a exfoliated flake. Absolutely. Oh, look at that. A little baby diamond python. Just exactly where it should be. It's very cold. Feels frozen. Right, this is a fairly average baby diamond python, although it's very hard to tell what they're going to turn out like when they're this size. Sometimes people have ended up with stunning animals from babies that look pretty average. This one would have probably hatched late last year or early this year. It's now August, so it's put a bit of size on, but really not much. In captivity they'd be a lot bigger than this at this age. This is probably at least 6 months old, probably a bit more. Looks in fairly good condition though. No major scars, no damage to it that I can see. It is a little bit skinny, but come the summer it will start to feed again and put on some weight. Well, there you go. Now we've found our beautiful little diamond python. We'll put him back under his rock where we found him. In the wild, diamond pythons are highly variable in colour and pattern. This 3-foot specimen was filmed near Gosford and is better than the average. The trend among breeders has been to produce lines with more contrasting colours, and particularly those with large amounts of yellow. One breeder who has developed a very nice line of diamond pythons is Kel Worley. I spoke to him at the Sydney Frog and Reptile Expo in Castle Hill.
This is a diamond python that has just won second prize in the Wild Expo show at Castle Hill. It only missed out on first prize by 1 point. It's a bloodline that's taken me about 10 years approximately to develop. I was sort of striving to try and get the neat little rosette size, the little diamond shapes, and try and get them evenly spaced and eliminate all striping. Just originally selected animals from whole clutches of babies, kept the most prettiest ones, bred them, did the same thing again, kept whole clutches again. It's quite an extensive bit of time, spent tying it all up. And this is virtually what's been achieved after 10 years. This sort of pretty colour and just the form in general of its pattern is what we're looking for. And it's quite exciting because we'll get a chance to put this male over an equally as pretty girl, and sort of very exciting what we might find next time.
Found throughout coastal North Queensland is Australia's largest snake, the amethystine or scrub python. The longest specimen to be reliably measured was 5.6 metres or 18.5 feet, found in 1999 just north of Cairns. Just south of Innisfail, the Tully River winds its way down from the mountains to the Coral Sea. In its lower reaches it is flat and choked with sand. At its headwaters, just above the Korea hydroelectric power station, the valley is littered with huge boulders that provide perfect scrub python habitat. One of the best places to find the amethystine python is here at the headwaters of the Tully River, about 3 hours south of Cairns. It's the second week of August, which is a perfect time to find them in the early morning when they come out and try and get a little bit of heat from the sun. As you can see, I'm dressed with longs and a jumper, and it's not really ideal clothing for North Queensland, you would think, but it's actually quite cold. It's about 8 o'clock in the morning, the sun's just peeping through the clouds, it's just starting to warm up. The pythons will be just about ready to stir and come out of their crevices and holes in the ground and come out into open areas to bask. And I'm going to be walking up this gorge now. This is an ideal place to find them because this is an inaccessible area. Not only is it very difficult to get to and remote, but it's also protected by a locked gate, because just further downstream in front of me is the Korea power station, which is an area that's off limits to the public. So the pythons that live in this area are completely isolated and protected from any interference and disturbance by people. So they're actually very healthy populations here. Now this is the first specimen we've come across this morning. We've been walking for about half an hour. It's about 9:30 in the morning. First patches of sunlight have just appeared on the north side of the bank, and that's where we found this guy. The sun has gone behind a cloud now, but he was sitting here in a nice patch of sunlight. Now this animal is typical of amethystine pythons you find in the wild. This is an adult male. Males don't grow as big as females, and I can tell by its spurs and its thick tail, but it's in terrible condition. By human standards, this animal is possibly close to death, but actually in reptilian standards, it'll probably survive these injuries. It's in the process of shedding. It looks as though it's been trying to shed maybe yesterday. It's got dry. Now it's sitting in a little puddle. It's trying to soften its skin, ready for shed. It's not going to shed its skin in one piece because it's covered in gashes all over its body. Being cold-blooded, if a python grabs a prey item that is a little bit too big or a little bit too feisty, and its body temperature is not high enough, it actually struggles to constrict the animal quick enough before it can inflict damage. And these injuries tend to occur a bit more in the winter, when the animal needs to get some fuel, but it's not quite at operating temperature. And so its prey has a bit more time to inflict injuries. But I would say, judging by the look of these scars, they're from combat with another male, because it looks like another male's grabbed this guy and ripped it. Possibly a bigger male, possibly a stronger male. This one's not in fantastic condition, as I said. It really needs to get some moisture onto its skin so it can get that old shed off. That old shed looks like it's been hanging around for a couple of days too long. Now, although this animal can't see me very well because the old eye caps are covering its eyes, it can still defend itself. I'm not interfering with it in any way physically, but I have come a little bit too close for comfort from his perspective. And he's retracted into the S position, ready to strike at me. He's looking at me. He's sizing me up. I'm going to demonstrate to you what will happen if I get a little bit too close for his comfort. Now what he's doing is he's striking at me with mouth agape. Up until 10 minutes ago, he was probably not warm enough to be able to react this way. If he'd been in the sun for a few hours, he'd be significantly more aggressive and he'd probably be latched onto my thigh by now. But luckily he's still quite cold. You'll notice that his eyes look very opaque. He's not blind. That's just what a snake looks like when it's about to shed. In a day or two, hopefully, if it doesn't get too dry, it'll shed those eye caps right off with the shed from its head, and then its eyes will be clear again. So actually that opaque look to its eye is actually the old shed that's ready to come off. I'm sure there's more of these guys around, so we'll just have a look around, and hopefully some more patches of sunlight will appear. The sun's disappeared behind some clouds now, but if it does come out again, I'm convinced that we'll find more. Over the next hour, I searched the sunny side of the river and discovered several more scrub pythons. I also noticed one climbing into the canopy adjacent to the creek. From the power station cable car, I got a great view of it basking at the very top of the canopy. A large specimen was even seen basking on the grass right next to the power station itself. This is a 4-metre amethystine python that I've just taken out of its cage. I'm just about to feed it, but before I do so, just wanted to pick it up and show you how big and bulky these things are. They're pretty heavy. I'm a reasonable sized person, and this is about as much as I can handle. Feels like it weighs 30 or 40 kilos. I'm not sure how much it does weigh, but you'll notice I'm holding it behind the neck. That's because even though this is a captive born animal, it's never really settled down, and it will latch onto me if I let it go. And if you get bitten by one of these, it's not like a snake bite, it's more like a dog bite. They've got very long recurved teeth, and they leave a massive bruise. Anyway, we'll put this guy back on the lawn and give him something to eat. One of the other really popular subspecies of carpet python is of course the jungle carpet python, which you find in northeastern Queensland, the rainforests of northeastern Queensland, such as the forests that surround me here. Now, the best way to find this beautiful animal is to actually drive on the roads at night. The first couple of hours after sunset, when the roads are still warm, temperature's still relatively high, that's when they're out and they're active. So as soon as the sun goes down, which is probably in about 20 minutes, I'm going to start driving this road and see if I can find something. Okay, right, and it's now nightfall, so let's head off and see what we can find crossing the road. The white-tailed rat. Well, there's a lot of frogs out tonight, even though it hasn't started raining yet. It's a little bit overcast, but the frogs have come out anyway, which is a good sign because frogs are the natural prey of a lot of snakes. So if the frogs are out, it's a sign that there may be some snakes out. Things are looking promising in the first 5 minutes. Oh yeah, I think we got something on the road here. Oh, it's looked promising. Oh, that looks like a carpet. That is really nice. Wow, now that is a sight for sore eyes for any herpetologist or any reptile keeper. That is a jungle carpet python, a yearling by the look of it. Still quite cool. Still quite cool. Obviously wasn't out basking much, wasn't in a very warm place. Certainly is a very nice specimen. This has beautifully contrasting patterns. It's got very clean yellow markings. Now that is a characteristic that is highly prized by reptile keepers. You can see that the yellow is very clean and it doesn't have a lot of black tipping in the scales. There's not a lot of muddying with melanin, which is the dark pigment. So this is actually quite a nice specimen. If this was in a captive collection, it would probably be a highly prized animal. But it's actually starting to constrict my hand now. It's feeling a little insecure and it just wants to get that feeling of security, and that's why it's constricting me. It's being defensive, it's not being aggressive in any way. And I can feel the temperature of this animal. It's actually a bit warmer than I thought. It feels warmer than the temperature of the air, which would make sense because it's probably been basking for a while. Okay, well we'll just take him off the road and put him in a tree. Jungle carpet pythons vary quite a bit in colour and pattern depending on where they are found. This snake originates from Atherton and is less colourful than this one originating from the Johnson River. In this individual from Cape Tribulation, the yellow has been replaced by white. Selective breeding in this subspecies has produced some spectacular pythons. This specimen won first prize at the 2009 Castle Hill Frog and Reptile Expo. An animal such as this is considered outstanding because of its bright and highly contrasting colours. The carpet python family includes several other subspecies that are somewhat less colourful. The Western Australian form Morelia imbricata is particularly dull, like this one filmed in the wild near Perth, though hatchlings do look a little brighter. This is the Murray-Darling form, which is similar in pattern to the West Australian form, but lighter in colour. Morelia bredli, or the Centralian carpet python, is a much more attractive orangey red. This is a clutch of bredli pythons in the process of hatching. Like all carpet pythons, hatchlings do not emerge with adult coloration. It usually takes at least 6 months before you get an idea of what sort of adults they will become. The Darwin carpet is another subspecies, but this is renowned for its snappy nature. This line has been developed in an albino form, which is attractive, but unfortunately just as snappy as the regular Darwin carpet. The road test results for this episode produced the following scores. For the diamond python, hatchlings go for about $300 each, so on price I gave them a score of 7. Diamond pythons are bred in captivity with some regularity, but they are not as easy as some of the other subspecies. A 6 on availability. Having evolved to withstand cold winters, Diamond pythons should not be maintained in a heated enclosure all year round. However, they should not be allowed to get too cold during winter either. In an outdoor enclosure, they will seek ultraviolet levels and temperatures that suit them, but they must also be given sufficient recesses to shelter from extremes of heat and cold. Indoor enclosures should provide a similar temperature gradient and also provide plenty of artificial UV, a score of 5. Diamonds are well suited to life in an outdoor aviary, where they have access to natural sources of heat and light. However, they have been successfully kept and bred indoors. As a general rule, your cage should be big enough to allow the snake to stretch out to its full body length, a score of 6. Will conveniently eat frozen thawed rodents such as rats and mice, a score of 8 in the fuel category. Wow factor. Diamond pythons are a familiar snake to many people on the East Coast, particularly those in and around Sydney. A wow factor score of 3, giving a total score of 35. For the jungle carpet python. Jungle carpets range in price from about $400 to $1,000 each, depending on pattern and colour. A score of 5 seems fair. Jungle carpets are popular and frequently bred in captivity. A score of 8 on availability. These pythons do benefit from a heat source made available all year round, but as with any reptile, they also require a thermal gradient and a place to cool down within the enclosure. A score of 7. Garaging. An enclosure should be big enough to allow the snake to stretch out to its full body length. These snakes also appreciate plenty of branches within their enclosure. A score of 7. Will conveniently eat frozen thawed rodents such as rats and mice. A score of 8 in the fuel category. Wow factor. This is the most popular subspecies of carpet python, and some of the colour and pattern morphs being developed are very attractive. A wow factor score of 6, giving an overall score of 41.